Okay, well, the first thing I'd like to say is a welcome and a thank you to everyone watching around the world because today is episode 536 of the Simply Inspired podcast. Seems very surreal to say that, but it is true. And I want to thank all of you for sticking with me for this long. So far, so good. And anyone tuning in for the first time, also, thank you. And I'm very, very honored and blessed to welcome to the show today a legendary, record breaking, Hall of Fame freediver, Tanya Streeter, who is also a TV presenter, environmentalist, TED speaker, so many things. Today, there will be so many stories from the freediving world, from pushing past the perceived limits that we think we have. There's some cool stories teaching Chris Hemsworth to dive. I mean, there's going to be some wild stories. But today isn't really just about the stories, it's also about the lessons. Because as I was saying to Tanya before we started recording, everything that she represents as a human being, not just as a diver, I feel is of immense value in the sense that we need people like Tanya to show us that our limits are only really constructs of our minds in many ways, that we can make a positive difference in the world, we can achieve more than we ever thought we could. And there will be a lot of these intangible but practically applicable lessons, I guess is the best way to put it. Lessons, in other words, that you can all apply in your own lives, whether you are a freediver or not. And most of you are not, so there will still be lessons that you can apply. Now, with all of that being said, Tanya, I really do appreciate it. I told you I would say this again when we started recording, but I really do appreciate you making the time for this, and I really do appreciate the fact that although I understand you had a few reservations about the length of time and how much freediving has changed, I will say that. At the same time, I hope that with that introduction, I have first of all done that justice to your achievements, but also I'm very, very grateful for you making the time to do this little talk with me today. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me. Thanks for persisting.
Well, very, very welcome. We got there. We got there. I mean, I love a challenge. I know the first time you said, okay, life is very hectic and I can't do it. And I thought, okay, well, that's fair enough. You need some space, you know. And then the next time I thought, I wonder if I could tackle it again. And so, you know, but it really is an honor. And I really do mean that. And I'm not just saying that because the camera's rolling. I do mean it because as I've already said, from the way that I look at it, the things that you represent through your achievements as well as the achievements themselves are just so inspiring. And you know that's hand on heart the my view of
Well, you're welcome. I wasn't lying the first time. I am genuinely very busy, but yes, the greater truth of it is that a lot, like literally decades, have passed since I was an active freediver, and so it doesn't feel in many ways it doesn't even feel fair that I'm the one talking about it. Certainly I can't speak to present day training and techniques and things like that. I'm way too washed up for that. But yeah, it's just I'll be honest with you. I'm still trying to reconcile my own journey in freediving, and so sometimes it feels disingenuous to get up and talk about it. But it's interesting because obviously over the last 20 years I have talked a lot about freediving, and I've given my take on it, and then as the years have gone by I've talked less and less. But what's been happening in the background with me is trying to really calibrate, like, okay, well, how does that fit in my life? How does that pertain to who I am as an individual, as a woman, as a mother? um and also, who gives a shit? There's that. um and so it's yeah, it's a lot. And the older I get, the less I feel inclined to talk about it, just because I really don't ever want to take away from athletes who have much more valuable experiences to share at this point, especially with other freedivers, and I mean with other athletes across the board. um and I was once a freediver trying to eke a living out of doing, following my passion. And I know that exposure is vital to that process if you want to be able to do it. And for me now, into my 50s, to want to come along and talk about myself in the freediving world, the idea that it might take away from somebody who needs to do that, it just doesn't sit well with me. So sorry for being a pain in the ass to get to agree to do this, but that's a little bit of the background. The personal side of it is that I'm still trying to figure it all out myself, um and then the professional side of it is that I just want to respect other athletes who deserve the opportunity as well. So having said all that, Liam will be calling you all to interview you later. Right.
I will indeed. I will indeed. Well, I'm fascinated by the whole freediving world. As you know, I interview people across many different sports, but I have to say that this freediving, it's a very special thing from an experiential point of view, from the mental side of it, as well as the physical side, and the applications to life in terms of the way altering your breath, altering these things applies in life. Before we get into any of that, though, I have to say one other thing about what you said there, Tanya, because yes, okay, times change, times adapt. There's pros and cons, there's good and bad, there's, all of this social media stuff now would be different than when you started and everything. But nonetheless, without people like you, those athletes today who you feel you're taking away from wouldn't necessarily have the opportunities that they have either because, it takes a different kind of mentality to go into a sport when it's more niche, as it sort of would have been in your day, I'm guessing, less well known, and certainly something that you wanted to do straight from the heart and something that really pulled you in a different way. Now, I'm not saying that people today don't have that because I'm sure they do, and I'm sure there's all sorts of challenges they have to overcome. But there is an established path to follow now, whereas there wasn't then. So what is
Yeah.
I'm gonna flip the script in what you said there. I mean, what do you feel is your contribution to making it possible for people to pursue a career as freedivers today, all these years?
um that's a really good question. That's a really good question. I applaud you because it's interesting to get to this stage of life in general and be asked a question I haven't been asked before. So good job. That's you might have peaked a little too soon. Just kidding. My contribution, again, that's going to be hard to say just because I don't look at myself like that. But um, I would say the most valuable, honestly, the most valuable contribution that I think that my career years ago has had to today is anything to do with safety. Arguably, when you're the first round, and I don't think of myself as the first round, maybe second or third round of sort of well-known free divers. um you're making it up as you go along, and we were, and we literally, we had to be innovative. um and so I think of some of the safety measures that we put in place that now are commonplace, that you just wouldn't. I think I was the first diver to dive with a lanyard in a world record attempt. And it wasn't the type of lanyard that you're looking at now, but just the concept of being attached to the rope. I'm not saying that I was the first to think about it, but fairly, I think I can confidently say um, that we were the first world record to put that into play. So and then there's other things like, I'll be honest with you, I don't even know what the rules are these days, but I know how much they changed while I was diving. And even just things like the countdown, how much, what the surface protocol was. Like, this was all developed and refined in the during the era when I was diving. And because I was fairly prolific with world record attempts, that it's arguable, I think it's fair to say that our team would have done some steering when it comes to safety protocols. Not necessarily saying that's where we landed. I'm sure some of it was wrong, but you got to do some things wrong to get to right as well. Um, so that would be one thing. I think, if I'm going to be bold and talk about myself in this light, which is not easy for me to do, Liam, but um, I, I would say that possibly, when we go back 25 years to when I was actively competing, um, we didn't have internet. Well, we had internet, but we certainly didn't have live streams and social media and stuff like that. So what I was able to do, because of the records that I was challenging, because of the marketability that I have as a human being, you know, pros and cons to that, but it's a reality. You know, at that time, in that era, I was attracting a pretty large amount of media exposure to our sport. So, um, you know, I think maybe that's one of the things too. Again, I'm not solely responsible for it, but I did some big things in some beautiful places, you know, and I garnered, I had some great management team around me that really knew what to do when it came to endorsement contracts and stuff. So yeah, I would say a contribution to safety and a contribution to the exposure of the sport. Both of those two issues are very much a double-sided, you know, two-sided sword for me. Some of it is good, some of it is absolutely terrible. Um, but it's par for the course when you are, you know, kind of pioneering something, which again, I'm not suggesting that I was, but being early, you know, when we have this perspective of 25 years later, and we look at where the sport is now compared to where it was then, you know, arguably we were kind of at the forefront of it. So yeah, I would say that equipment design, safety stuff. Yeah. Um, Nothing more than that though. I think the safety stuff is huge, but yeah.
Uh, okay, well, as I've already said, I mean that is a very tangible, practical view, and I like that. And you know, obviously your humility with these things is nice. It can be a little bit harsh. You can be a bit hard on yourself at times as well, but nonetheless, okay. Say there is that intangible quality where it's more than that, Tanya. I don't know if this is a question as such, but I just want to say to you, I mean, it's also the fact that if there weren't people like you, and I'm not saying you're the only one either, but people like you in those early days, people wouldn't be able to do what they do now because there wouldn't have been, there have to be those front runners. There have to be those people like
Yeah.
yourself. People are looking and thinking, what's she doing? And then thinking, oh, it actually worked. That's pretty cool. Because that always has to happen first, doesn't it? I mean, somebody we jump on a plane now and somebody said, hey, well, I can build something that can fly. And it's like, yeah, okay, sure you can. Those brothers, now it's normal. So, I mean, you're looking at
Yeah.
diving 500 feet and all these things. People be like, yeah, okay, no oxygen. And now so again, I'm not putting you on the pedestal to say you're the only one, but your contribution with that, please, in your own space, take some time to value it. Now, with that being said, I mean, a more obvious question here. I don't think I've picked too soon. I think I have a few more that you might not have heard, but
That I might never have had.
maybe we'll see. But a fairly obvious one, unfortunately, that isn't one of those is obviously the reason why. Because when we're talking about all of this, and we're talking about you doing something that wouldn't have necessarily appeared to have led to everything that it led to in your life in terms of the successes and the experiences and everything that's followed suit. And you would be doing something because you love to dive and you had that burning drive to do it, and you were obviously breaking records almost straight away. And there's all of these things. So really, it's just when you look back now to your mindset, when you look back now to your mindset then, I mean, what was your actual reason to do all of this and to push yourself to the limits that you pushed yourself to, if you had to put that kind of in a nutshell, kind of thing?
Um, it's complicated. So if I look back to my mindset then, um, it was simply, but it was simply put, I was trying to figure myself out. I was trying to, go on this journey of self-empowerment, and figure out who I was. I mean, I think I was 27 when I started. I think that I can't do the math, but I think I was 27. Um, and 23. maybe less. I don't know. Whatever. Let's say 27. And so, a young person trying to figure it out, trying to figure out who I was, trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life, really more who I was and what I was made of. Now, it, whatever, 10 world records later, a couple of decades later, I can tell you and a lot of therapy later, I can tell you that it's a lot more complicated than that. Um, and uh, I'm still trying to figure it out. I think I understand why I needed to to do something so physical, so punishing in a way, and something that was so in touch with every aspect of my own personal humanity, like my body, my spirit, my soul, my mentality, everything. I understand that now. um I can't talk about it now, though. I'm not there yet, but I understand it, and I think the PG-13 version has always been, and it remains, that I needed to figure out who I was, and I just felt that the ocean was going to be the place to do that, and so that's the wonderful version of it. It's a lot more complicated than that. It's pretty dark, but um, it's not something I regret at all. It's been a massive learning curve. And honestly, it really does continue to be a really big learning experience about myself. Very valued. Yeah. But not my identity. That was always very important for me. Like, absolutely not my identity, just something that I did as part of who
Well,
I am.
yeah, that's an important distinction. That's a very important distinction. In actual fact, I feel that's a distinction that more athletes today could do with making. So there's a life lesson right then and there. Let's not go into that because it's controversial. But trust me, in my view, they really could. But anyway, aside from that, okay. So with this being said, obviously it takes courage to do everything that you did, and that might seem quite obvious. But I'm curious as to when you said about uncovering yourself, because I also don't want to get into anything personal, it's your business, just the things that people can use for their own lives. And one of those is courage. One of those is the old cliche of, there's nothing to fear but fear itself, and facing your fears and all of these things. And, even though I'm sure being at those depths and things is quite, it has a magical side, I'm sure it does. It also has that facing of the fears. And I'm curious, not so much about that, but if that courage that you possess is innate, or if that is something that you cultivated and developed like a muscle over your time in the sport, if that makes sense. Because many people want to face their fears, but a lot of people think, well, I don't know if I can. And so you have a unique, I feel like you have a unique insight on that aspect, please, Tanya.
Yeah, I think so. I don't think it was something innate. I don't think it's something cultivated. I think it was a gift, from the ocean to me. I mean, I'm not that brave anywhere else, anywhere else in life, and no other aspect of life. I don't consider myself that brave, and I don't. I never once considered myself brave when I was competing. I considered myself driven, sometimes too much. I considered myself very fortunate and blessed to be able to explore myself in an environment that I always considered was going to keep me safe. I mean, I grew up in the Cayman Islands. I, the sea was everything, playground, proving ground, all the things. But above all, it was a place where I always felt safe and I always felt protected. So, um, I think what allowed me to be courageous. I'm not saying I was never scared, but I wasn't scared of the things you might think. I wasn't scared of going deep. I wasn't scared of dying in the ocean. Because that was never on the radar as far as I was concerned. I was scared of not achieving something I said that I was going for. Like, that's hard. You have to announce a world record, however far in advance you want to announce it, and then I'm not a quitter, so so sometimes that was hard because I'd have the line of pushing hard and pushing too hard was often very blurred for me, um, because it was more important for me to do what I said I was going to do, or at least try to do what I said I was going to do. So quitting was never an option. Um, and I don't just mean like, oh, I'm not going to do this record. I mean every single dive, every breath, every rep in the gym, every length in a pool, like that they on an absolute finite level. There wasn't anything that I quit at. There was never a dive that I turned around. Never, 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 unless it was something physical stopping me, which I'm sure you've read a million times if you've read, a single interview. I never let anything physical stop me. And anything mental stop me. It had to be physical. It had to be a broken piece of equipment, a broken fin, or if I couldn't equalize. But never a, oh, I don't feel it today, or I didn't sleep well enough today. I'd be like, well, just keep going. So I think I, in the years, especially the immediate years after retiring, I would find myself saying, come on, Tanya, you once dived 500 and something feet in the ocean on a single breath. You can go do this. You can get out of bed and go to the gym today, or you can do this interview or this appearance, or this transitioning to film for me was very, very hard, hugely hard, because there I was in the ocean, which had always been the place where I could be the best version of myself, and at times, like better than anybody else in the world. But being on camera is hard, and so it's really hard for me to fail in that environment, and reconcile all of that, because I did fail. Like sometimes I sucked on camera. Um, so it's all part of the growth. I think it feeds on itself. I mean, I know sometimes I would fly away from a world record, 2, 3 days after the fact, and I'd like fly over and look out the window on a plane leaving Turks and Caicos and look down at my dive site and be like, what? That was me? Like, I know it's possible. I know somebody can do it, but me, the fact that I was the one that did it, I had absolute disbelief. I mean, it would be gone like that. And I talked about myself being like on fire with passion and drive and everything else, and then when the world record was done, like this fire would just go, and it was then this tiny little ember that I just carried around with me that I could ignite every now and again, specifically for diving. Not that easy for other things. I mean, every speech I gave, I was like sweating buckets and my knees are knocking behind the podium, and um, I was scared of everything but freediving. Uh, so the courage piece is something that the ocean gave me the opportunity to develop in myself. Um, and I've had a couple decades to sit back and think like, why me? Like I'm this pretty small scaredy cat person. I'm not, when I think about the men who compete in the sport and the men that I was going up against occasionally. I mean, these are people that look like they should be able to do that. This is it's not the little blonde chick who wants to just sit on the couch and pet the dog. Like so it's that part of it was hard for me to reconcile, but it it it. it it the perspective has forced me to ask myself, well, why me? And then, my husband and I, we've watched the sport change, the sport grow. We've watched people lose their lives. We've watched people have tragic accidents. We've watched squeezes and nosebleeds and ruptured eardrums become part of the norm. And I never had any of that. I never had any of that. And so I've had to think like, what is so different? I've rejected this suggestion that, oh, maybe there's something different. And I've been poked and prodded like a lab rat for throughout the course of my career a lot. And there's nothing different about me. There's nothing physically different at all. There's much better athletes out there who could achieve things like this. But I think I do have to acknowledge that my mind was what is maybe different, my drive maybe. Um, it happened at the right time, at the right place, with oh, God knows the right people around me, to allow me to just really take all of that off my plate and just focus on my goals and, my body and my spirit in on the journey. So I think maybe my the ocean of my mind allowed me to be as driven and as brave, I guess, as I was.
It actually makes a lot of sense. It actually makes more sense than you might think. And I could see the little flash there of like, okay, did I explain that? Did it make sense? I was thinking, yeah, actually, because the mental side, it's a massively mental thing. I have to ask you two other pieces about that, though. I mean, one of them is you were saying there that the ocean allowed you to do this, and you obviously have a very special connection with the ocean. And maybe I'm reading too much into this, Tanya, but it sounds almost like a spiritual thing, like you have a unique connection with the ocean that, not just to dive into it, but you said about the sense of freedom, being your authentic self, the fact that the cameras at one point were sort of interfering with that because then, you're being something for the cameras, not for yourself. And it makes sense. But can we, no pun intended here, but go a little bit deeper into the aspect of your actual connection with the ocean? Because I'm hearing you talk now, and it's like a relationship. It's like a relationship with a person, with the ocean, the way you describe it. So I appreciate that's a little bit abstract, but I also feel there'll be a fascinating answer and maybe some lessons in there if you don't mind sharing that, please.
Yeah, yeah, no, of course. I mean, it's not irrelevant. It's the biggest part of my diving. Like I wouldn't have been able to do that had I not been as comfortable as I am in that environment. And it stems from growing up in the 70s in the Cayman Islands, where we had nothing else. We didn't have any extracurricular activities going on. I mean, I didn't even have TV till I was 13. And then it was, VHS tapes that you got from some club somewhere. It was just like, I'm that old, you guys, I'm that old. Um, and so, so the ocean in that regard is my playground. Like comfort on a level that is like somebody else climbing a tree, and I did that too, or playing whatever in their front yard. Um, so there's that, and then the truth is that I was packed off to boarding school when I was 9, and quickly realized that the thing that I missed the most about being at boarding school in England, 5,000 miles away from Cayman, was the ocean. And that was super, super hard to be away from that. And then, um, you know, I think I can, I think I can probably safely say, like, I'm the child of divorce, and sometimes a rocky household to be in, and the going putting my mask fins and snorkel on and going in the sea was my escape. And when I say safe, like really safe to be in the ocean and free, and it's almost indescribable. I have little stories that I can think of in my head of moments where, it was important for me to be in the sea and nowhere else as a child. And now having children myself, and I can kind of see how place is important. It would have been important to me, and it would have been that safe space for me. So cut to 98, 99, 2000, that sort of era when I was diving, and now I'm going to go out and I'm going to push my limits in the ocean. I would talk to the sea. I would sit up the front of the boat as we were riding out to the dive site, and it wasn't like a prayer, it wasn't like a deal, it was more like a gratitude. Maybe that's a very sort of 2025 thing to say, like giving gratitude to the oceans, that thanking it, and also making my own promises, like I'm going to make good on this, like you're going to, you know this is where I get emotional, Liam. It's why I don't like to do this. um I would go, okay, take a deep breath. I would,
You
I would
okay?
say, like, yes, I'm fine. I'm fine. I'm such an emotional person. There's not, I cry almost every time I talk about this. So not that you're not special, Liam. Um, I would say, I'll find a way to pay you back. There was this big sort of, like discussion that I really believed I was having. And I was never saying, please keep me safe or anything like that, but just, thank you for this incredible gift that I get to go explore myself, like away from everybody else. Like there's no, yes, I have safety divers like all the way down, but you can't talk to them. I couldn't even see them. All I could do is hear them and like feel them. But so for me to go down to the bottom of the rope, and to feel so safe was huge. And so it was never lost on me that that was because of the relationship that I had with the sea. And so um I just felt like this need to come back and to pay it back. I always said, I'll pay you back. You keep me safe, and or you're allowing me to do this, and keeping my whole team safe. And so, I think that the relationship was there because as a child I was so protected by the ocean. I really felt that it was a place to escape to, and then as an adult it really became the place where I could explore myself. And I the hardest part about my diving was watching everybody else deal with it, people that cared about me going, you're going to do what, you're going to try what today. And watching the fear, watching the tears, watching people who really cared about me worried that I was going to hurt myself or worse. And so there was a lot of relational stuff going on in my career, and the strongest part of it was my relationship with the ocean, and it's the thing that allowed me to do it. And so yeah, it's really really important to me. And I was telling my husband the other day, we've lived in Austin for 25 years, which yes is landlocked, and yes it's hard. I'm like drying up by the minute. um and I told him the other day, we will we will retire by the sea somewhere. Like I don't care if it's in the Orkney Islands in Scotland. Like I don't care. It's got to be by the sea. I've that's where I want to finish my life. I have to be around that again. Um, and I don't even need to get in. I just need to be there. I need to be able to see it. So I don't even know if I answered your question. I'm sorry. Hopefully,
A
you
few
won't see that
different
again.
questions. No, a few different questions in one. I mean, well, first of all, I mean, with the emotional, the connection and everything. No, I was genuinely surprised you were crying there, Tanya. I mean, I wasn't after an exclusive of okay, she cried on my part. I mean, no, I genuinely just I'm not that callous, unfortunately. I
No,
mean,
I'm just kidding.
the world is, but I do my best to not be. But it's a beautiful thing. I mean, what else can I say? But it's a beautiful thing, and I mean, as I said, it's like a relationship. Now, another thing with that though is you mentioned something else earlier, which was the flip side of that. So, in other words, feeling so safe in the ocean, but then making putting the word out there that, I'm going to do this record, I'm going to break this record, people's fears, people's doubts, and the pressure. And when I was hearing you explain this, I mean, it sounded very much like the pressure, in a way, came from people's fears, people's expectations, as you said earlier, having to sort of live up to that, or follow through, I should say, with that. And okay, you always did. But it was interesting because I could hear the distinction in what you said there between the actual dive, which is like, oh, this is great, this is going to be fun, this is my happy place. And like, oh, but I told people about it, and they're all going to be
Mm,
watching. And it was almost like that kind of thing, almost like you
double-edged
would just,
sword.
yeah,
Yeah.
well, you did say that. You did say double-edged sword, but almost like you'd be happy. I'm just going to do this myself. I wonder if I can go 500 feet today, but oh, there's people watching. Those, what are they doing? So how did you handle that aspect of the pressure, which sounds to me like the bit that was the actual pressure for you more than the dive itself, if that makes
Yeah.
sense, if I've described that the right way.
Yeah, it was hard. I mean, we would always do the world record depth about 2 weeks before world record day. To sort of have it in the bag, know that I was going to be able to do it on the day. Which obviously these days is not common at all. Um, and I don't even know that it was common back then. I'm not sure everybody did that, but it was just sort of the way that we wanted to do things. And that was that was the day. Like that was the day that we all had fun, like as a team, um, when we would achieve it in training, it was great because within days of achieving it in training, here comes the judges, here comes the media, here comes whatever to take away the real truth of what we're doing, or what I was doing, the reasons I was doing it for, take away the real essence of it. And that's when it would get hard. Like that's when I would really struggle emotionally. That's when I would struggle. Yeah, that's actually even when I would struggle physically because I suddenly wouldn't be able to eat. And so my energy levels would crash. And yeah, just generally, that's when the pressure it's one thing to be able to do it. It's another thing entirely to be able to do it on the day when it counts. And so, yeah, that was a different type of pressure. And how I coped with it is so simple. I just counted down. I would just be like, okay, day 9 before a record, I'd be like 10 days and this is all done. Day 8, 9 days and this is all done. 2 minutes from official top, I'm like 5 minutes and this is done. I'm done. It's done. Because by that point you sort of feel like the monkey at the circus. You just got to do what you said you had to do. And I was never doing it for anybody else. And so my enthusiasm for doing it on record day was also really hard. I have this real, and I still to this day, and I think you probably picked up on it, have this issue of authenticity. Like I don't want to be out there in the public eye unless I can be authentically myself. But by definition of being in the public eye, you will never be taken for authentically who you are, ever. And that is why I'm, to this day remain as private as I do, and why it took you asking me 10,000 times to do this to actually agree to do it. Um, because I don't, I don't like to be in a room with somebody, literally or metaphorically speaking, who who thinks that thinks they know me based on what I did or what they read or what they heard. But that's my own shit. Like I can't like not get on with life because of that. I just have to work through it. And ironically, things like this do help me to work through it, because the further I get from freediving, the less I care, and the less responsibilities I have to, sponsors and things like that, to be anything other than authentically myself, and cry on a podcast and stuff like that. So um, I I think, and that's why I'm still trying to reconcile it all, because I did a lot of things that had these impacts, some of them good, and they arguably some of them bad. I mean, I did things that people lost their lives continuing to do, and I will I my ego is not so huge that I think, oh, so and so died because I did so and so, such and such. Like not at all. But I am maybe sensitive enough or insecure enough to believe, well, maybe if I hadn't done that, then that person would still be here today. So that's it's hard. It's a lot of it sits with me hard. Um and yeah, it is definitely a double-edged sword, because the growth I experienced, the growth I still am having because of what I did, the things I'm still learning about myself, which is so important to know who you are in life. I can say that in my 50s now. I should have figured that out a lot sooner, but like it is really important. And so freediving was a lot for me, but just not in the ways that you might think. And listen, I don't think it's that for everybody either. I don't think athletes are out there just trying to get world records. They've got their own personal reasons for competing. By the way, I also don't think of a world record as anything different than somebody else's personal best. I think everything that it takes to get to your personal best, no matter how that stacks up against somebody else's, is exactly the same journey. Same for me, same for somebody who's struggling to touch the bottom of my swimming pool. Like it's no different. Um, so yeah, again, really long non-answer.
Really good expansive answer. I mean, I love it. I love the authenticity because that authentic side of you does show, and it is there, and that's the truth. I mean, by the way, with what you said there, it is interesting with people who are famous, if you like, which, you basically are famous people feel they know them. And it's interesting because it's not always the case, but you do have a lovely authenticity. In fact, it's actually quite refreshing. That was why I enjoyed talking with you on Instagram when you said, "No, life's too busy. I can't do this." And you said, "Yes, I can do this, but you should know I have absolutely nothing to offer you. I don't know why you're talking to me." And I thought, "Oh, this is really cool. It's like very, brutally honest." And then I thought, "Okay, and I just love a challenge. I have more fun with this sort of conversation today where we're having this sort of bit of banter in there than when people are just totally having the public front. But anyway, that's another story for another time. With the whole aspect of this, though, I mean, there is another important thing that you said earlier about the freediving doesn't define you, and the other thing is that you've had a lot of impact through other work, as far as I can see. I mean, in other words, even when you do an inspirational talk, even when you have been doing other things, and I've seen articles and I've seen bits and pieces about the way we control our breath and how that can affect other areas of our life. I've seen things to do with limitless, breaking through beliefs, and there's just these other things. But how do you measure your impact, I should say, either outside of freediving or in the ways that are sort of connected to freediving, but there will be people who know you more as a speaker or more as, something else, obviously the environmental side as well. How do you measure your impact on people in other ways? Because I know you said you never did this for other people, but then it all kind of snowballed that you have had that impact on people. So in the ways outside of freediving directly, even if they come from the profile that you have from freediving, if that makes sense. How do you measure your impact in terms of inspiring people in that sense? That's the best way I can think of
Um,
to distill
yeah,
that.
I mean, I don't typically, but it is an interesting thing to think about. And there were times when when it was more like when I was actively freediving, and I'd get some email, like, I remember getting an email from somebody who had like been told that they were never going to walk again, and they're going through this awful journey of trying to learn to walk again after some horrific accident. And I saw your documentary about your dive, and that was the first day I got on the treadmill. And I cried for weeks after that. I was like, oh my god, there's the reason, because I was always asking myself why. Like, the very first record I did was an American record, and I did it because I just wanted to see if I could do it. I was like, I just want to see if I can do this. Everybody else seems to think I can do it. Let's see if I can do it. And then I did it, and then, as you said, it snowballed and got way out of control. um, but I was ready to be done then. I was like, okay, check that off the list. I don't need to go any further. But it was definitely communications like that, and I think of all hours at dive shows and conversations with I was going to say fans, people, people who were fans of freediving. Um, really realizing that there was an impact, like just this idea. I'm sure you've read it somewhere in an interview. I had this motto, this the thing that we kind of wrapped up my freediving in was redefine your limits. The idea being that we all have limits. We just don't know where they are until we try. We think we do, but it's until try to go a little further and to push that limit and to redefine it, that you realize, oh, that I can do more. And in mine, it was very black and white. I would train all week, dry, which I hated, and then I'd get to dive on a Saturday, and I'd set the ballast, set the plate 10 feet deeper every weekend. And I'd sit on the back of the boat going, there's absolutely no reason why I shouldn't be able to do this, because I worked really hard and I deserve to do it. And so there was that sort of measurable redefining of my limits. Last week, I thought, when I surfaced from that dive, I thought, there's no way I can go any deeper. And then I'd work my butt off in the gym and doing life, and then have the gift of being able to dive again on a Saturday and go deeper. And I'd redefine my limits every time. And so that concept really stuck with me, the idea that if you just try, if you're just brave enough to try, and in my case supported by enough fantastic safety divers and support people, um, and sponsors, that I could do that. So it just always felt like this gift I needed to make good on. And you know, the redefine your limits part, I think really struck people. I think that was being able to package it up like that was super helpful. And then, you know, as you said, I progressed from freediving into film. The film work I typically did was very heavily environmental. That brought my whole journey with the ocean back full circle. You know, the very first time I got asked to you know, be a patron of an organization related to protecting a reef or a species of fish or you know, other marine animal, I was like, this is it. This is why I did it. You know, I'm sitting around scratching my head, like how and why. And then I'd get asked to go speak about XYZ at some, you know, Save the Oceans conference. And I'm like, okay, I get it now. It's my soapbox. I get to talk about stuff that's important. I get to give back to the ocean. So, you know, and in amongst all of that work was encountering people who had really uplifting stories that they would share with me about their own lives and the difference, that just knowing somebody could and would and did push themselves to do something that back then was considered extraordinary, um, was enough. And that's the wonderful thing about humanity, is that, you know, underneath all of the other noise, we do seek connection and inspiration. So that made it all make a little bit more sense to me. Measuring it, I can't say I ever really did, but recognizing it and being, you know, kind of inspired by it myself, in terms of, you know, people being brave enough to come and tell me their story and how my story impacted their story, like that just feels good. That feels like, that feels like it gives, it offered more room for, you know, authenticity, which is what I was craving so much, or what I fought so much, because it's so contrary to, you know, to being in the public eye, is this idea of being able to be authentic while you're there. So yeah, it meant a lot. It still means a lot. I mean, it still means a lot that I get that I get asked to do these things, and but it means more when somebody reaches out to me and says, I'm asthmatic. How did you do that? And I'm like, oh yeah, I'll talk to you all day long. I can help you. Um, yeah.
Okay. Okay, recognizing it rather than measuring it, that makes a lot of sense. And in a way as well, Tanya, I mean, it sounds like that kind of I don't want to say deal, but that kind of conversation you had with the sea, where you said, "Hey, I'll give something back to you," and everything. In a way, it did kind of happen because the environmentalism and everything that you do there
Yeah.
in that way. So interesting, promise kept. And I
Mhm.
must admit, you know, not to go off on a tangent here, but you know, having this sort of spiritual edge to myself as a person. I mean, I do believe that that kind of thing, not usually in the way that people think it does, but it does happen. But anyway, that's just really cool. I mean, what else can I say about that? But really, really cool. You guys kept a pact with each other, and yeah, I mean, the recognizing of that. I know it's not why you do it. I know it's not something. I know that you're um, well, it varies between humble to just brutally, sometimes self depreciating and self punishing. It does vary, but it's somewhere in the middle there. There's a nice humility as long as it doesn't veer off into the self punishment. So I know you would never sort of think of yourself in that way, of you know, well, you know, I inspired this person and I did that. And you know, sometimes with these interviews, I do have to listen to people who do think that, and I think, well. Okay, but in this case, I know you don't do it for that reason. You don't think of yourself that highly, but you have inspired people, and that's why I said at the beginning about what you represent through the work you do and that kind of intangible impact. What you said there, somebody who can't walk, getting on the treadmill, somebody who's asthmatic, trying something, maybe trying diving. I mean, these things are of immense value, whether you meet people or not. Which leads me to another thing. I mean, when you were just completely shocked that anyone would want to know about your story when I reached out to you, and even though I'm really glad I did, because look at the awesome things we've been talking about. Does that does that surprise you? Because on the one hand, Tanya, you know, I mean, we're talking about the amount of time, and you're saying, oh, it's all these years ago, and it's this, that, and the other. And I'm thinking, well, okay. I mean, even if we look at I said to you at the beginning, the Hall of Fame thing. I mean, I would have been what, I don't know, 4 years old then or something when you were. So you have to think, okay. yes, a lot of time has passed, but then, as I said to you, I think before we started recording, the fact that the ripple effect, even though that sounds terribly sort of cliche to say ripple effect, I can't really think of a better way to put it. The fact that actions you've taken and intentions that you had and things that you represented, people you met, and all of that has had a continual movement all the way to the present day. I mean, does it surprise you that people still want to hear these kind of stories? Like I still wanted to hear this story, and people listening to this. I mean, how do you feel that? How do you reconcile that aspect? Because you're in a different part of the world, you're many years removed from it, all of these things. But I'm just curious, as seen as you never did it for that, that's how I'm framing the question. You never did it to be recognized, you did it for yourself. But it's continue to snowball years later. I mean, I'm just curious how you feel about that, if that makes sense. That's a rambling.
Yeah, I mean, how hard it was to pin me down to do that should give you some idea. I kind of feel like um you know, it's still there. I appreciate it. On some level, it's kind of fun, but it feels it's back to my authenticity thing, right? Like, I don't know. It's just really complicated. It's not like I'm not flattered to be asked, and um, and there's a side of it that's like, oh yeah, it's not totally forgotten. I just never, even when I was diving, I remember after one of my world records, and I think it was the no limits world record, the 525 feet, when they're like, this is the first time a woman's broken a men's record in, across all sports. I was like, cool, but I didn't find a cure for cancer or anything. Let's just keep it all relative to how good it actually is. And yes, I have a tendency to downplay whatever. That's just me. That's who I am. It's a bit silly sometimes. Um, but it's not that different now. It's nice to know, and it's sure nice for my team, for people that supported me to know that they were part of something that has led to other people doing great things, and it's still being talked about today. So I don't know really that I reconcile it so much as just sort of accept it. And um I I say no to pretty much everything that comes along that has anything to do with diving these days, because I have this weird thing about talking about it, as we've discussed that ad nauseum. But also, I love being home with my kids. So if I have to go somewhere and do something, I'm like, yeah, I don't know. It's either got to be something that is going to have a huge like environmental impact, be something that I'm really, really interested in. And these days that has nothing to do with diving. Um, or frankly, pay me a lot of money to make it worth me going. And I think like that part of my career is over. Um, but yeah, the other part of it that I want to mention before I forget, that is with respect to other free divers, and out of respect to other free divers. Lest we forget, I'm really, I'm well known for that one really deep no limits free dive, which the record still stands for women anyway, and great. But that's not real free diving. Yes, people. The question is always going to be, especially from your average lay person, is going to be, how deep can you dive and how long can you hold your breath? They don't care how you do it. And so that's great. So I can say, well, I held my breath once for 6.5 minutes, which is eclipsed now in terms of world records. But and yes, I still have the world record for a woman going the deepest. But I just it's even it's even just sort of embarrassing for me to, or I feel just cringing saying that, because real free diving is without the sled and without the lift bag. So that is where I feel the attention and the focus should be. I'll use my no limits record to talk about things that I'm interested in, but I just, for me it's really, really, really important that today's freedivers, yesterday's freedivers, tomorrow's freedivers understand that I do not think that achievement on a sled relates in any way, shape, or form to what the athletes are doing today, what they've done in the past, and what they'll do in the future. Because what they're doing, I mean, my variable weight record was 122 meters. And when I did that in 2003, so that's 400 feet, 20 2 or so years ago, they're swimming 400 feet now. They are, there are athletes that are going constant weight to that depth. I only did constant weight back up again. I rode a sled down to that depth and swam back up again. So that's incredible. That's the sport. The sled diving, not really the sport. So I think that's probably one of my other hang-ups. If I still held a world record for constant weight, like, yeah, I'd probably be screaming that from the mountaintops. But there's a part of, being recognized for free diving, when in the real world of free diving, we all know that no limits is not free diving. It's like the roller coaster version.
Okay, well that does make sense. I mean, I still think it's a unique sort of
Sure, sure.
view.
Yeah, of course it
No,
is.
it's a unique achievement, but I was actually going to say, Tanya, that it's a unique perspective in the mind of an athlete. It's like, oh, I did something amazing. But I mean, look, if I'd have done anything in my life even close to this, I would not be as humble as you. I would be screaming from the rooftops. I'd be on every show. I mean, I can just imagine myself at the bar, or like with any type of record saying, hey, I can go deeper than anyone you've met. I say, what? So it's just it's very much a case of, it's testament to the unique mental aspect which you definitely have, the unique. So I think that a big part of this, I mean, hearing this whole conversation really and listening, is the fact that really maybe you're pigeonholed, or maybe you're kind of, this whole conversation in a weird kind of way reminds me of, like, very beautiful women, which you also are as well. Sorry if your husband watches this, who are defined very much by their looks, right? So in other words, you meet a lot of women, and men speak to them and they say, well, you're very beautiful, but they don't see any depth. In a weird type of way, it reminds me of this. So like, people look at you and say, okay, free diving, you achieved. Hold on, I've frozen there. Bear with me. I'm back. Free diving, you achieve these things, you achieve these amazing things. They deserve recognition, but there's so much more to Tanya as a person. It's very much like that. It's very much like, I'm listening to this and thinking, okay, it must be very strange to be in your shoes and to say, oh, there's like this phase of my life that everyone continues to focus on, even though there's been lots of other phases. I
Yeah.
I I totally get that, and that leads me to what I would like to make the final topic really with this, is actually, to sort of update things in terms of, okay, you're done with free diving, you're in Texas, you're away from the sea, and you're with your kids, and that's cool. But I mean, what inspires you now for the future? Because you said there, you say no to everything. You see, so I am special after all, because you said yes, even though you said I'm not.
You're
But
persistent.
well, yeah,
No,
that's
I'm just
true.
kidding.
That's true. That's true. No, I mean, for me, it's kind of, it is like that. That's my challenge. If I contact somebody, will they even answer? If they answer, what will they say? If I get them on, can I do a good job? It's got that own kind of challenge for me, which makes life sort of more interesting. And I do this to help others, but that aspect of the challenge. But anyway, that's off topic. But in terms of what inspires you either right now or for the future, I would like to talk about that, because I've been listening to this whole thing and I'm thinking, okay, there's so many more things we could talk about. We won't have time. But you know what? Tanya is saying people look at Tanya and see a diver, when there's lots of other aspects to Tanya as a whole person. And that's a big part of what I see. So, in other words, if you wanted to share anything about something else you're doing in your life, something else you hope to be doing, something else that's just totally beyond diving in the present tense or in the future, what would that be? What would that be?
Um, you know, I mean, my inspiration now, without a shadow of a doubt, is my kids. Like, I have a 17-year-old and a 10-year-old. And so, I'm in the trenches with them, and everything I do is for them. Every moment of my day is planned around making sure that I'm parenting to the best of my abilities. So that's far reaching, because I also feel very strongly, about the environment and about protecting the environment, and protecting our own physical environment, our bodies. And then my spiritual journey has kind of led me to the point where I believe everything is about the planet. Everything we should be doing should be with the planet in mind. Um, and so, my world, as far as how I used to live it when I was, in the thick of everything to do with freediving and filmmaking and stuff like that, is smaller in that regard because I don't do a lot of it anymore. But it's, in my opinion, arguably more important because what I do is I'm trying to be the best possible role model for my children. And kind of anybody who I rub shoulders with in my day-to-day life, because at the end of the day I'm never really going to shake this title of having been a freediver and a successful freediver at that. And so it always, inevitably it comes up, and inevitably, for better or worse, that means that people are kind of a little bit more interested, maybe, or interested where they wouldn't otherwise be interested in, well, how do you live your life? And so if I have the opportunity to say, well, I'm trying really hard to reduce my carbon footprint, or not use as much plastics, and um feed my kids healthier, and think about the planet before everything you do next. um that's really it. That's what the focus of my life is now. I'm trying to be as healthy myself for as long as I can because I have young children. I started late in life at that. um and it's just really, really important to me. It's become my main focus. As we have this one planet that we get to live on, and we're screwing it up really fast. um And I really do believe in the power of the individual, not just in, your one plastic bag that's not going to find its way into the ocean if you never buy it. But also, you know, showing that you can live that way, showing that you can live a very fun, enjoyable, healthy life without consuming every last resource on the planet and leaving it, you know, like somebody else's garbage can. So that's really what my focus is. It starts in this house, and hopefully it kind of is lapping over into other areas of this neighborhood and this town and this planet.
Well, that's a wonderful thing. That is a wonderful thing. And all I can say, I mean, lead by example. Again, that old saying, be the change you want to see in the world and
Yeah,
everything. And people say, oh, well, but it is actually true. I mean, change starts with what looks back at you in the
yeah.
mirror, and it goes from there. So, I mean, that's a valuable lesson in and of itself. Redefine your limits. There's quite a few different things that you've shared during here that people can actually pick up on and apply. But that is definitely one of them. We can all make a difference, and 100%. In fact, again, I do my best to always look on the bright side. And obviously, being in America with some of the environmental policies, I'm not going to veer into the controversial territory, but it's not great. But I've actually been inspired by the opposite side of that, of how many people actually come out of the woodwork to actually care and actually make a difference and actually do something in contrast to that kind of thing, not just in the States but everywhere. It's very, very inspiring, and I believe that there will be a lot of front runners for that change. So just do everything you
I
can.
hope so. Yeah, I hope so before it's too late.
Absolutely. Well, having had that unique connection, or I say unique, but that certainly that very rare connection with the sea, not only with your relationship with the sea, but also the things you must have seen down there, and just not only the competitions, but also what you said about the way you grew up and so forth, and having had that really sort of intimate, I'm going to say, relationship in the sense of experiencing things with the sea that most people don't. You have a very unique perspective on that, so I'm glad that we've got to share that. And Tanya, thank you for doing this. I mean, it's one of those things where the toughest interview I ever cracked was not you. So I'm sorry to say that in that context, you
Good.
don't have.
I don't want anybody's toughest.
No, no. I mean, you. It was actually an ex bank robber turned youth worker and motivational speaker who didn't want to do any podcasts. And I said, but I mean, I eventually talked him into it. One last job, he said. Always one last job. I said, I know.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, actually, yeah, But the point is that the fact that you have agreed to this today is a wonderful thing. I'm honored, and all joking aside, I really am honored. I really do mean it. And I'm honored, not because of the records and all of those things, but because of actually what we're talking about now, the impact. Really, the two sides, the environmental aspect is a big one, and the redefine your limits or the however you define that. In other words, people just breaking through their limits. That aspect mentally is massive as well because you do still represent that, and that was the inspiration that I took from it. So, with all of that being said, thank you so much for your time. Great job, really really good talk, really down to earth. And you probably know this already, but if you ever do visit my part of the world in Cyprus, there's some beautiful oceans here. You've
I
probably
love Cyprus. I love
yeah,
Cyprus. I'd
thought
love
you
to come back. My kids want to go so badly, so you never know. We may yet make it back to that part of the world.
absolutely. Well, if you ever do, then it's and you know that already. I thought you might, but you've probably been in every ocean everywhere. But it is absolutely amazing. And coming from, I come from Wales originally, so coming from a sort of area which is coastal, but with the cold, grey, murky sea, it's still lovely in a different way. It has all sorts of
Hmm.
different things to offer. But coming from my point of view, 2 years here so far, the first experience of the blue, clear sea where you could see all the fish and all of that. It's just fantastic. So it's yeah, if you ever do get that chance, please do, and I will be keeping an eye on everything you do with the environment and with the there's my battery warning there, but with the environmental thing, the very last thing I'm going to say, Tanya, if there's ever any other ways I can help specifically with the environmental aspect, if anything ever comes up, please let me know
Thanks, Liam.
because I mean that. I'm not saying that to be
Yeah,
polite. I mean, here I've got involved in like the beach cleaning things and all types of initiatives that they do. And so if there's any little things, even if it's just sharing stuff, please
yeah,
let me know and we'll go from there. Other than that,
will
you
do.
have a great day and thank you again.
Thanks, Liam. It was a pleasure. We had fun.
We did. We had fun. I told you we would. I told you we would, and we did. Uh, oh, and actually,
All right, man.
one other thing before you go. Can I